Pro Wrestling Almanac podcast. Celebrating professional wrestling from yesterday, today, and tomorrow. For wrestling fans, by wrestling fans. Hello again, everybody, and welcome to week 3 of the Pro Wrestling Almanac podcast. I am your host, Tristan, along with my fellow hosts, Mike and Chad. How you guys doing today?
Not too shabby. How are you guys?
Pretty good. Mike?
Doing good. Doing good, man. Just long week of wrestling. Can't wait to get into it.
Yeah, it was a big week. It was a lot of fun. Let's see what's going on in the world, guys. How are we enjoying our lives?
Now that my wife and I both have our new cell phones, we're doing a little bit better.
Good. I'm enjoying the unemployed life again still, but that's I've got some prospects on the horizon, so hopefully that's going to be rectified in short order.
Oh, did I tell you I got a raise?
No, congratulations.
No, I didn't. I just wanted to rub it in.
Oh, well, you're an asshole.
Seeing for me now that we've gone through Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday of just nonstop wrestling, I finally have my life back this week for the rest of the week. So it's been a lot of wrestling, and that's the interesting thing that's been going on now with the Big Four. They're just trying to turn every one of those into like a WrestleMania weekend.
Yep. And that's cool. So I like it.
It is. It's long. It's a lot of wrestling.
That it is.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't even watch NXT tonight just because there was too much.
So we just, before we get going, I just want to make a couple of quick notes. Just want to remind you all, you can check out our website, ProWrestlingAlmanac.com. We're also on Facebook and Twitter at PW Almanac, and our YouTube channel, which you've obviously found because you're listening to this podcast. But make sure that you subscribe. We want to get that subscriber count up so more people can see us. So with that, we're going to go ahead and go right into the Wrestling Results Roundup, or the Wrestling Results Roundup, as we like to call it. The Wrestling Results Roundup. Okay, here are the results from this week's televised shows and pay-per-views. On NXT, Street Profits Montez Ford and Angelo Dawkins beat Lars Sullivan and Chris Silvio. Ruby Riott beat Billy Kay, and Roderick Strong and Drew McIntyre fought to a no contest. On Lucha Underground, Prince Puma beat Fenix to advance to the finals of the Cueto Cup, and Pentagon Dark beat Mil Muertes to advance to the finals of the Cueto Cup. On GFW Destination X, Knockouts champion Sienna beat Gail Kim, Desmond Xavier beat Ishimori to win the Super X Cup, X-champion Sanjay Dutt beat Trevor Lee in a ladder match, OVE Jake and Dave Christ beat Jason Cade and Zachary Wentz, and Matt Sydal beat Lashley to earn the title shot of his choice. On WWE Main Event, Kalisto beat Kurt Hawkins, and Lindsay Dorado and Grand Metalik beat Arya Daivari and Drew Gulak. On Ring of Honor War of the Worlds UK London, Mark Briscoe beat Ryan Smile, The Addiction, Christopher Daniels and Frankie Kazarian beat Rey Bucanero and Ultimo Guerrero. Jay Briscoe beat Kenny King. Bully Ray beat Jay Lethal, Silas Young, and Shaw Samuels. Ring of Honor six-man tag team champions Dalton Castle and The Boys beat Jushin Thunder Liger, Mystico, and Delirious. Ring of Honor World Television Champion Kushida beat Titan. And Los Ingobernables de Japón, Tetsuya Naito, Hiromu Takahashi, Sanada, Evil, and Bushi beat the Bullet Club, Ring of Honor World Champion Cody, Ring of Honor World Tag Team Champions, the Young Bucks, Marty Scurll, and Hangman Page. On GFW Explosion, Tyrus beat Caleb Conley, and Drago beat Idris Abraham. On Ring of Honor War of the Worlds UK Liverpool, Kenny King beat Hangman Page, Ultimo Guerrero and Rey Bucanero beat Mystico and Titan, Jay Lethal beat Josh Bodum, Bully Ray and the Briscoes beat Los Ingobernables de Japón, Bushi, Evil, and Tetsuya Naito. Mark Haskins beat Silas Young. Ring of Honor World Television Champion Kushida beat Hiromu Takahashi, Marty Scurll, and Dalton Castle. Ring of Honor World Tag Team Champions, the Young Bucks, Matt and Nick Jackson, beat The Addiction, Christopher Daniels, and Frankie Kazarian. And Ring of Honor World Champion Cody beat Sanada. On NXT TakeOver Brooklyn 3, Andrade Cien Almas beat Johnny Gargano. Sanity, Eric Young, and Alexander Wolf beat the Authors of Pain, Akam and Rezar, to win the NXT Tag Team Championship. Aleister Black beat Hideo Itami. NXT Women's Champion Asuka beat Ember Moon, and Drew McIntyre beat Bobby Roode to win the NXT Championship. On Ring of Honor TV, Best Friends Chuck Taylor and Beretta beat Coast to Coast, Leon St. Giovanni, and Shaheem Ali. Jay Briscoe beat Matt Taven, and Ring of Honor World Six-Man Tag Team Champions Dalton Castle and the Boys beat Colt Cabana and the Tempura Boys. On Ring of Honor War of the Worlds UK Edinburgh, Kenny King beat Josh Bodum and Colt Cabana. Ultimo Guerrero and Rey Bucanero beat the Briscoes. Bully Ray beat Evil. Los Ingobernables de Japón, Tetsuya Naito, Sanada, and Bushi beat Kushida, Mystico, and Titan. Hiromu Takahashi beat Mark Haskins. The Young Bucks and Hangman Page beat Dalton Castle and the Boys to win the Ring of Honor World Six-Man Tag Team Championship. Ring of Honor World Champion Cody and Marty Scurll beat The Addiction, Christopher Daniels, and Frankie Kazarian. And Silas Young beat Jay Lethal in an Edinburgh street fight. On WWE SummerSlam 2017, on the kickoff show, Intercontinental Champion The Miz and The Miztourage, Curtis Axel and Bo Dallas beat Jason Jordan and the Hardy Boys. Neville beat Akira Tozawa to win the Cruiserweight Championship, and the Usos beat The New Day, Big E, and Xavier Woods to win the SmackDown Tag Team Championship. And on the main card, John Cena beat Baron Corbin, Natalya beat Naomi to win the SmackDown Women's Championship, Big Cass beat The Big Show, Randy Orton beat Rusev, Sasha Banks beat Alexa Bliss to win the Raw Women's Championship, Finn Balor beat Bray Wyatt, Seth Rollins and Dean Ambrose beat Sheamus and Cesaro to win the Raw Tag Team Championship, United States Champion AJ Styles beat Kevin Owens, WWE Champion Jinder Mahal beat Shinsuke Nakamura, and Universal Champion Brock Lesnar beat Braun Strowman, Samoa Joe, and Roman Reigns in a Fatal 4-Way match. On WWE Raw, Enzo Amore beat Big Cass in a Brooklyn street fight. Nia Jax beat Emma. Elias beat R-Truth. Cedric Alexander, Rich Swann, Mustafa Ali, and Gran Metalik beat Noam Dar, Arya Davari, Tony Nese, and Drew Gulak. Raw Tag Team Champions Dean Ambrose and Seth Rollins beat the Hardy Boys. Finn Balor beat Jason Jordan, and John Cena and Roman Reigns beat Intercontinental Champion The Miz and Samoa Joe. On WWE SmackDown Live, Bobby Roode beat Aiden English. SmackDown Tag Team Champions The Usos beat the Hype Bros, Zack Ryder and Mojo Rawley. Shinsuke Nakamura beat the Singh Brothers in a handicap match. Naomi and Becky Lynch beat SmackDown Women's Champion Natalya and Carmella. And United States Champion AJ Styles beat Kevin Owens. On WWE 205 Live, Cedric Alexander and Grand Metalik beat Tony Nese and Drew Gulak, and Cruiserweight Champion Neville beat Akira Tozawa. And that's all for this week's Wrestling Results Roundup. Yeehaw! All right, guys. So that was the results from this week, and let's start with the big news from this week. We had NXT Takeover Brooklyn 3, and we had WWE SummerSlam. So let's start with Takeover. What did we think, guys? I loved it.
It was a good show. Had some low points, but I definitely enjoyed it.
What would you call the low points? Because I really didn't see any. I mean, granted, the Hideo Itami Aleister Black match really didn't do anything for me. I didn't really see any low points of the show. So what are you talking about?
I agree. I wasn't a big fan of the Aleister match and Itami. For me, the only highlight of that match was getting to hear Jim Ross call a match with Mauro Ranallo.
And that was pretty great.
Exactly. I mean, for me, that was amazing. I just didn't like the fact that, for me, I didn't think the Drew McIntyre Bobby Roode match was that good. I didn't think it was like some of his previous matches, and it comes down to now knowing Roode's matches, his previous ones, and knowing that now he got the call up, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. I have some mixed feelings about that. So it kind of, in retrospect, knowing everything we know now, I look at that match a little less favorable. Okay,
Chad, what about you? What were your thoughts on the show?
From the little bit I got to catch a glimpse of, because I had a fun-filled weekend, I thought it was overall a decent show, as all the takeovers are.
Okay.
I mean, it wasn't the best one. It wasn't the worst I've seen, but again, I didn't catch a lot of it, but I caught glimpses here and there.
All right.
Passing.
So we'll go ahead and kind of leave you out of this next part then. No hard feelings. We've all got a life. You can't watch it. You can't watch it. It's no big deal. Mike, match of the night, Asuka Ember Moon.
Definitely. That was my number one match of the night, followed by it's not a close second, but it's definitely my second, was the Cien Almas Johnny Gargano match.
Okay. For me, the second best match of the night was the tag title match. I thought that match was crazy. It was a great match.
I actually did watch that match. It was pretty good.
Yeah, it was a solid match. But that Asuka Ember Moon match, it was great. From beginning to end, both of those women really stepped it up and put on a clinic. They stole the show, in my opinion. Of course, we did have the repercussions of Asuka getting injured. Probably happened from the Eclipse. Wouldn't be the first time it's happened. Apparently, one of the iconic duo, Peyton Royce and Billie Kay, got injured from it, and it turned into a storyline. So potentially that move is a little bit dangerous. I mean, it's a sit out stunner from the top rope.
It's got to be perfect. I mean, it's a move that has to be perfectly timed. And,
I would say so.
And the problem is with a move like that is that it leaves too much room for error. As a result, now the women's champion has a broken collarbone.
Yep, and so she's going to be out for 6 to 8 weeks, it looks like. All right, let's move on to SummerSlam. First off, the audience was just dead for most of the show. Now, you can't necessarily blame that on the show right off the bat, because I would say that all three of the kickoff matches were hot, except for the fact that the Barclays Center didn't open the doors, and they had an empty crowd, to the point where The Miz addressed it on Raw and said that, so this is what a sold-out Barclays Center looks like.
I think the problem is, and this is for an arena like the Barclays Center, I know it's the problem they have over at Staples Center, for instance, is that it is a pain in the ass to get in security-wise. I mean, in today's day and age, and I can't speak for Barclays, I can speak from my own experience in LA. It has taken me, for any event at Staples Center, depending on which entrance I have to go through, 35 to 45 minutes sometimes to get through the door because of the bag screenings, the metal detectors, the ticket scanners.
Right. But the venue knows that they're doing all of these things, and yet they still chose to not open the doors until right when the kickoff show is starting. That's the venue's fault, in my opinion.
Now, was that confirmed that it was legitimately they just did not?
The doors were not open. I mean, people were still, when they showed the kickoff show at the beginning, everybody was just still standing around outside.
Wow.
The arena there were more empty seats than filled seats when the matches started. Yeah.
That is not good.
I think that the Barclays Center really dropped the ball, and it might affect them when it comes to hosting future SummerSlams.
Well, they've already agreed to host SummerSlam 2018, so it's a guarantee that it'll be there next year.
Yeah.
So the question will be is that if they don't have a good enough showing, I mean, I definitely look for it to move. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they moved SummerSlam back to LA.
They did it there for 5 years in a row, something like that?
5 or 6. I mean, it was a long time.
I'm kind of partial to them putting SummerSlam in Tampa.
Yeah, no, I think that's why I think doing it in LA was a good idea, because when you think of like summer destinations, maybe if they had it in like New Jersey, that would make sense.
Yeah.
But nobody really thinks of Brooklyn as a summer destination. I'm sorry.
No, not really. I mean, it's as much as I hate California and I've lived here my entire life, I mean, I definitely agree. When you think about summer, you do think about the Los Angeles area, the beaches.
Or Florida.
Exactly.
Or Florida.
Florida. I mean, shoot, WCW did a bash at the beach on Huntington Beach.
Oh yeah.
And then the next year they did it in Florida, where
Pensacola.
Yeah, they've done a bunch. I mean, but WCW used to do Spring Breakout, and when it came to choosing venues appropriate to their theme, they were really good at that.
Except for the one, which was basically just an excuse for the guys to ride Harleys, because that Hog Wild pay-per-view was not a good one.
Well, it wasn't a good pay-per-view. I don't know, dude. At Road Wild 99, Randy Savage went up against Dennis Rodman, and it's a funny story. When I watched it a couple of years after it had happened, I see the part where Randy Savage throws Rodman into the porta potty and then tips it over, and there's sewage going everywhere.
Yeah.
And I said out loud to myself, holy cow, I completely forgot that it happened. And as soon as I get the D out in happened, Tony Schiavone comes on and says, no one who witnesses this sight will ever forget it. So, needless to say, I've never forgotten it since because of how wonderful that whole situation was. But, yes, I had forgotten it. Road Wild was a themed pay-per-view. It was different. They made no money on it. That was the big thing, is they made no money. They didn't charge admission.
You had a bunch of bikers who they weren't. Here's the thing: the matches themselves weren't horrible. It just the crowd. It's a bunch of rowdy bikers that it's not the main demographic for a wrestling fan, and so.
Well, I'll tell you what.
Really involved.
I'll tell you what. I was watching Hog Wild, the first one, 96, this week, and Chris Benoit and Dean Malenko went 20-minute time limit and then 2 5-minute overtime periods before Benoit finally won the match, okay? And I'll tell you what, they won that crowd over. Like, the crowd was into that match. When the time limit expired and they said they were going to keep going, the crowd went pretty nuts. It was a nice thing to see, to watch these guys actually win the crowd over with a technical wrestling match. Yeah. Just check it out. maybe that'll be one of our Ghost of Wrestling Past events that we watch here pretty soon.
Definitely.
Yeah, it's a good one. So, what else we got? Let's see. We're talking SummerSlam, right?
SummerSlam.
So,
I mean, okay.
so the crowd was dead.
What was your favorite match from the kickoff show?
Probably the tag title match.
Yeah.
The matches themselves were largely forgettable. They really weren't anything special, and that goes for the main show as well.
For me, this will be the pay-per-view that, until the main event itself, the most memorable moment of the evening for me was watching Cesaro run into the crowd and grab a beach ball and tear it up.
Yeah, but you know what? I'm pretty sure that would have been the most memorable moment, even if the show itself wasn't crap in the bed.
Oh, I agree, but I mean, just the sheer fact that up until that main event, the loudest pop of the evening was for a guy tearing up a beach ball.
Yeah.
I mean, that kind of says everything you need to know about this card.
So we're in agreement that this is pretty much a one-match show. However, there was a couple of moments in there that I think really stood out. The crowd came alive for the tag title match, the Raw tag title match, like you said, with the beach ball incident. And then they were really into Seth and Dean winning the titles. Natalya finally winning the women's championship got a pretty good reaction, and that was, other than the main event, that was the highlight of the show for me.
Well, that's because Natty's your girl.
She is my girl. I love me some Natty. We had a pretty decent streak of championships changing hands. You know, every title that was on the line until the U.S. title match, the titles changed hands. There was 5 title changes on the show. That's the Cruiserweight and the SmackDown tag titles changed hands on the pre-show. And then the women's SmackDown and Raw, and then the Raw tag titles. So both tag titles, both women's titles, and the Cruiserweight title changed hands. Then we get to the U.S. title. Really good match between AJ and Kevin Owens. Shane McMahon got in the way. I think that what they were trying to do with having him be in there and to tell the story, it didn't work. It really detracted from the match, in my opinion.
I would agree. I mean, they addressed it the next night on Raw when Owens was cutting a promo about Shane, and
that was SmackDown, buddy.
Yeah, it was SmackDown.
Sorry, SmackDown. Sorry, it's been a long week, but yeah, when they were addressing it, and basically Shane being out of position, Shane interfering. It was a good match, though. I mean, when you get two guys the caliber of AJ Styles and Kevin Owens in the ring, you're gonna have a good show.
Yes.
This match did not need Shane McMahon as the special guest referee.
No, it didn't.
Well, but it also depends on what is the WWE going to be doing between Shane McMahon and Kevin Owens. We all know that Shane O'Mac loves to be in a match with people. And he's actually pretty good in the ring.
Yep.
I mean, he's not bad, and he is. But people love to watch him.
With him, though, in the commissioner position, there are still ways for you. I mean, look, he didn't do anything as a referee or what have you, leading up to getting him a match with AJ at WrestleMania. So, I mean, they could have easily just based off of. I mean, and if he wanted to, have the match go one way and then have Kevin Owens win the match, have Shane come out, reverse the decision, tell the match to continue and start a feud that way. But to get him involved in the pay-per-view, I just didn't see any need for it.
Well, and the fact that he was directly involved in the outcome of the match really, really bothered me. Then on SmackDown, say, no. That was your imagination. He wasn't directly involved. AJ Styles won the match clean as a whistle.
Mm-hmm.
So,
by the way, when you and I were texting during the match, the Michael Cole pulled the typical 5 titles have changed hand tonight. I wonder if anything else is going to happen. And literally, you and I instantaneously said, "Yep," and that's it for title changes.
Yep.
And sure enough, none of the
other titles changed hands.
It's kind of like talking about a no-hitter during the no-hitter. As soon as you do that, there it goes.
Yep, exactly. Okay, so then we had the WWE Championship. At the time, I was very unhappy with the outcome, not so much because Jinder Mahal won, because I'm okay with him being champion, but because Shinsuke Nakamura lost. And you saw my posts on Facebook, and you saw we've talked about this.
Oh yeah.
I was unhappy, but Jinder Mahal has been a strong heel champion in my opinion. I just really wanted Nakamura to win.
Yeah, Nakamura's got to be. His time's got to come soon.
Oh,
but
yeah.
At the same time, I don't think that Jinder Mahal's time is going to end anytime soon. So that's the big problem, because Jinder Mahal is so great at what he's doing.
Yes.
I don't think he's going to drop the title until potentially WrestleMania.
Now they've been not rewarding their guys with a WrestleMania main event for the last couple of years. He's not going to hold the title into WrestleMania, unfortunately.
Well, he's probably going to hold the title to Survivor Series and drop it at Survivor Series.
Well, what's the next SmackDown event? Hell in a Cell.
That's right.
That's true, yeah.
So they're obviously, based off of what happened on SmackDown,
With the Singh brothers interfering.
Yeah, they are definitely continuing this feud on. So we could see potentially a Hell in a Cell match between Jinder Mahal and Shinsuke Nakamura.
But then if Nakamura wins, who do you put against Nakamura?
AJ Styles.
Easily. Oh, hands down. I mean, could you imagine AJ Styles and Shinsuke Nakamura?
You don't have to. Wrestle Kingdom, what was it? Wrestle Kingdom 10? Watch it.
No, and I know what you're talking about, but I'm just saying, for people who have not watched any wrestling outside of WWE, all they've heard about Shinsuke in New Japan and about AJ, what they know through, the different companies he's been through. I mean, that would be a dream WrestleMania match.
There's a lot of matches that could happen. I think that the money matches for WWE going forward are going to be. It looks like it's not going to be Braun Strowman and Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania, although it should be. It still could be. And possibly Shinsuke Nakamura and AJ Styles. I'd love to see those. I think that would be smart. Those would be the smart money matches that they could build the show around. But who knows? Okay, so let's talk about that main event, guys. Yeah.
I mean, that was incredible.
That was definitely one of the first matches in a while that's kept me on my seat the entire time.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And the fact of the matter is, and Michael Cole brought this up during the match, which I thought was wonderful, this was the first sustained beating that Brock Lesnar had ever taken. And that includes his previous career in the WWE.
He's never been manhandled.
Ever.
I mean, watching Braun Strowman throw him, I mean, literally, it was like watching Randy Orton throw a Singh brother. I mean, just the way he did it with ease and was just able to hurl him. I mean, it was... I mean, and we've seen Strowman turn over an ambulance. We've seen Strowman do some pretty amazing things. But we've never seen someone do what he did to Brock Lesnar.
Right. Braun Strowman... And I said this, I think I said it last week. Braun Strowman is the guy that the WWE can build their company around for the next 10 years.
Oh, hands down. And what's going to unfortunately happen, you know what Vince is going to do.
No, we don't, actually. We really don't.
I really still have a feeling that Vince is pissed with the way the crowd continues to treat Roman. Yet Braun, I mean, the guy came in as a member of the Wyatt family, wasn't really used well when he was with the Wyatt family, and then just organically became this crowd favorite. It wasn't organic though. They booked this to happen. If you remember, week after week, the only reason we have a James Ellsworth is because of how they were booking Braun Strowman. No, of course. But what I'm saying is they were trying to book Roman the same way, and the fan completely turned on Roman.
No, but see, they didn't book Roman the same way at all.
Well,
they booked Roman.
The difference is people are pressed by how Braun Strowman looks.
Oh yeah, his size.
His size, strength, and the fact that he's not your typical WWE guy.
Well,
because
see, I don't know about that though, because I would say you go back a few years and he totally fits the template of the WWE guy.
Well, not with the facial hair and the shaved head.
He reminds me of Big John Studd, man.
Okay, but we're talking WWF back in the 80s. As of right now, you look at the go-to guys. It was Randy Orton, John Cena, Roman Reigns, tall, good-looking, cut. I mean, that was what Vince has been going for lately. So
it's true.
For Strowman, I mean, Strowman has that, Big John Studd, Bruiser Brody type look, which hasn't really been around in the WWE as the top guy in a very long time.
You could almost say he kind of reminds you of Sergeant Slaughter, too.
Why is that?
I don't know. He's just this big, round face.
Are you just saying things, Chad?
He just reminds me of Sergeant Slaughter. I don't know why. Maybe it's the pants.
Okay.
Oh, we'll go.
So, yeah, but, I'm betting it's the pants.
For me, it's just, like I said, it's... Wait,
hang on a second, Mike. So do the Dudley Boys also remind you of Sergeant Slaughter?
No.
But but it's the pants, dude. They're all in camo too.
No, the boots. You got to go with the boots too.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sorry. I wasn't able to let this go so quickly.
Sorry. I thought somebody resembled somebody. I mean, my bad.
No, that's fine. It was when you said maybe it's the pants. You brought that on yourself, Chad.
But yeah, no, it was just watching what Strowman did during that match. Everything from using another office chair as a spear.
Yep.
Which, I mean, that is pretty impressive, to watching him turn over an announcer's table and land it on Lesnar. I mean...
And that was pretty great.
It was.
And you see Brock on the ground like, why did I agree to this?
Yeah. I really think the way they booked this match, the way the match was handled, and for me personally, I liked watching Reigns take the pin.
Yeah, I thought that was good, and it might mean that they're kind of moving past it. I think, based off of what we saw on Raw, that they may be going towards a Reigns-Cena match at WrestleMania.
But no, I'd love to see a Roman-Cena match, because if I have to watch Roman Reigns headline a fourth WrestleMania in a row, I think I'm going to lose it.
But it will headline the WrestleMania.
No, I don't.
Because it potentially could be a retirement match for John Cena.
Yep, it will be the main event. Okay, so we are decided the main event stole the show, was the show.
Made the show.
Looking back at the rest of the show after watching the main event, I'm like, maybe it wasn't so bad.
No, it was still bad.
No, it was. I mean, okay, here's my question. If we were to grade this, what grade would you give this pay-per-view?
See, that's really hard to say, because that main event was so good.
Well, it'll let you grade it on a curve then. Give me your initial and then
I'll give it. I'm gonna if I'm grading it, the everything else but the main event, that show gets a D-. However, that main event was so good, it seemed to bring the rest of the show up with it. And so I'm gonna go with a B.
See, I gave the show a little bit more credit. I mean, I gave it a C- to start with.
Okay.
And gave it a B- when you factor in the Universal Champion.
I might be being a little harsh. Okay, so let's move on to Raw. Braun Strowman destroys Brock Lesnar yet again, and not much else happens. John Cena shows up. He teams up with Roman Reigns to bury The Miz.
Before we get into that, let's just be honest. That man cuts an amazing promo.
That was a career-making promo right there, in my opinion. That was his pipe bomb.
Oh, it was his pipe bomb. And let's be honest, that entire crowd agreed with everything he said.
Yeah, but this isn't like if he was able to pull that off with a crowd like next week in Memphis, then I'll give him something. Well, but this was a bit of a smarky crowd. This is WrestleMania light here.
That was a crowd that was dead though during the pay-per-view though.
Right, but they were still the crowd that came out for SummerSlam. So we're not talking. Even if it was just a New York crowd, it's going to be a smarky crowd anyway. But SummerSlam has gotten so big. You've got the people that come out from all over for the show, and then Raw and SmackDown the next night, and Takeover the night before. They were at Barclays 4 nights in a row.
But regardless, if you look at it, this promo that The Miz cut, The Miz is great at cutting promos.
Yes, and usually he doesn't get the time to really do it.
No, you're right. But this promo was probably the best promo since the one that Punk
the Talking Smack promo.
I was going to say the mic out on it.
No, see, I was going to say the Talking Smack promo that he cut on Daniel Bryan.
It was basically the same promo.
Oh, it is. But, here's the thing. I don't care if they're in Sheboygan. He cuts that promo, the crowd is going to agree with him.
Maybe. Maybe. And that will remain to be seen, because I doubt this is the last we hear of this.
Oh, well, yeah. But we can all agree that everybody is tired of, it's like John Cena, Randy Orton. How many times have we seen that match?
Yeah.
Not that it's a bad match, not that it's ever been a bad match. It's always a great match, but you know what? We're tired of seeing it. It got obnoxious, but it is true. We would love to see when you have all these guys that are staying in places in wrestling, they're not giving room for the lower guys. And, Roman Reigns, as much as they're pushing for him to go somewhere, he's nothing without the Shield. And that was one thing I can definitely say with the pay-per-view I was really disappointed in, because I thought the Shield was going to come back on.
I agree.
And if they would have done that, it would have made the pay-per-view 100 times better.
Okay.
Not saying that the ending was bad, but it would have been better.
I've got a little potential inside information on that. Apparently, according to Dean Ambrose, the reason that Roman Reigns is not involved in the Shield reunion is because Dean Ambrose is still mad at him because he recently stole his apple pie from Popeyes. That is direct from Dean Ambrose.
By the way, hey, we forgot to mention it. As a result of SummerSlam, Dean Ambrose is now a Grand Slam champion.
He is, yes.
That is very impressive, and he's in an elite group of wrestlers. So,
So let me ask a quick question. Speaking of this, do we see Cena break Flair's record by winning the Universal title, or do we see Cena feud with The Miz and get an Intercontinental run?
No, there's no way. They're not going to feud Miz and Cena. It doesn't make sense.
That's the one title that John Cena has never held.
And he's not above holding a secondary title. For most of 2015, he was the U.S. champion.
The only thing is the only reason I don't see him, The Miz is doing a good enough job bringing prestige back. Unfortunately, the company isn't using the IC title like they should. The fact that it wasn't even... Now, in retrospect, when we look at how many titles were on this pay-per-view and how many titles changed hands, did we really need another title match on this pay-per-view?
Absolutely. Every title should be defended at every pay-per-view.
I agree. I'm just breaching the conversation for the sake of arguing.
I don't think that that's unreasonable, but I do think that it is unobtainable.
You can't say that, because that's why they got these pre-shows. You got a 2-hour-long pre-show on some of these pay-per-views.
What we could do, hypothetically speaking, is at least for the big four, every title should be up for grabs. 4 major pay-per-views every year. They should have every title on the line. That's the way that I feel. You want to have an enhancement match or a squash match or something, throw it on the pre-show. But from start to finish, SummerSlam, Survivor Series, WrestleMania, and the Royal Rumble, they should all be up.
Well, that's that's wrong. The Royal Rumble has the Royal Rumble, and that's the gimmick for the show. And the Survivor Series, I would love to see them go back to being the Survivor Series, like they did last year with the 3 brand versus brand matches. So right there's 2 shows out the window. You can't have 8 championships on the line and a Royal Rumble. You can't do it.
Well, okay, then just keep it exclusive to WrestleMania and and SummerSlam.
Right. I don't disagree with that.
You know, I mean, I do agree with you. I do like the old school Survivor Series with the teams. I wish they would do that more for pretty much the entire pay-per-view. But we'll talk about Survivor Series when we get to Survivor Series.
Yeah, we got a couple of months for that yet. All right, so let's go ahead and get into some of the big news here. Big Cass, knee injury, out 9 months, it looks like.
The wrestling gods are punishing him for that crap match against Big Show.
And that's why Enzo is on 205 Live now as well?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
That was just because he stripped down to nothing.
And Big Show's going to retire. I mean, literally, that entire match was a jump the shark moment. Well, just god-awful. I mean,
the match itself wasn't terrible if they had just taken the Enzo out of the equation. If he had just been not in a shark cage above the ring, because he took all the focus.
No, I agree.
I thought his hair took the focus.
But as soon as that match started and they put him in the shark cage and they raised that shark cage up, I'm looking at that going, why is that so low? If you remember the shark cage match that Jericho was in just a couple months ago, I mean, that was a pretty high up shark cage.
Hey, maybe Enzo's afraid of heights.
Speaking of afraid of heights, if Jim Cornette, who is deathly afraid of heights, climbs on top of a scaffold during a scaffold match and blows out both of his knees,
falling off,
a legitimate bump from the scaffold, I have no sympathy for Enzo being inside a shark cage if he's afraid of heights.
Nope.
I mean, it just, from the very beginning, seeing that cage low made me start questioning what the hell is going on.
Well, they got to be able to reach the cage.
Okay, so real quick, let's make a quick detour. Ric Flair. Apparently, he is awake, communicating, doing well, so that's great.
And
also, go ahead.
He's responsible for us getting Shawn Michaels as the new Colonel. Ric Flair was supposed to be, according to reports that I've read, they were going to be using Ric Flair at SummerSlam to do the come out to the crowd dressed as the Colonel. And they had to completely change the plans due to his hospitalization.
As I said during the show when we were talking, up until that main event, HBKFC was the best part of the show.
That and the beach ball.
Yeah, I mean, sure, but the beach ball doesn't even compare.
Oh, yeah, HBK as the Colonel is hilarious.
HBKFC. Get it right. Okay. Also, we got some news that Paige's uncle passed away, so condolences to her for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's too bad. Let's see. Destination X was last week. They have officially stripped Alberto El Patron of the GFW Championship. It's being put on the line in a gauntlet for the gold. And since Low Key was the #1 contender, he will enter at number 20 in the gauntlet for the gold. Also, another side note, Low Key no longer with GFW. So I think we can pretty much guess how that turned out. I'm saying that number 20 didn't win. That's probably a safe bet. The Ring of Honor had their War of the Worlds tour in the UK, London, Liverpool, Edinburgh, Scotland. Really, the only major thing of note is that their World Six-Man Tag Team Championships have changed. It's now being held by the team of the Hung Bucks, which is Hangman Page and the Young Bucks. So, yeah, had to jump back a little bit there, but let's go ahead and jump back to SmackDown. A couple of big debuts and returns on SmackDown this week. Had the glorious debut of Bobby Roode.
I don't like it.
Why?
Because I literally, as soon as I saw him come out, I mean, the reaction I had during the main event of SummerSlam where I jumped out of my chair and shouted, "Holy shit," I literally jumped out of my chair and yelled, "Son of a bitch," because I don't think they're going to use him well. I think he's not going to get booked well. I mean, we've seen what has happened to a lot of the talent that has come up from NXT.
Like the guy he faced?
Yes.
But that's not necessarily his fault, though. Simon Gotch quit.
Well, Simon Gotch quit, but the problem is that was a gimmick that one, and we discussed this on the first episode. That was a smaller audience, like NXT,
a consistent audience.
Yes, it's consistent. They can get involved with a character, and a gimmick like that. You start moving that into the larger arenas, and that gimmick, reports have always said, has never had the support of Vince. He thought it was stupid, he thought it was idiotic, and never really gave them a chance. Same thing with the Ascension. I mean, in the Ascension, they were an amazing tag team, and then they get called up. Yeah, in NXT, they were an amazing tag team, and then they get called up and get buried by the old guys on television. So
yeah, that was a shame. The Ascension had a lot of potential.
They did, and
they were. I mean, they are a great tag team. I won't say they were. They are.
Yeah.
I just don't see the WWE using. I mean, the only thing that makes sense to me is the reason why John Cena moved to Raw was because Bobby Roode came up to SmackDown.
No.
Because if you think, I think about it. You got now that can have a good rivalry between AJ Styles, Shinsuke, KO, and Bobby Roode.
Yeah.
Because KO, Kevin Owens now, as of last night, is not going to be able to compete for the U.S. title anymore as long as AJ holds it.
Right.
So he's going to need to get into a decent rivalry with someone. So, I mean, if they do it right, he can get into a really good rivalry with the Glorious One.
Sure.
I mean, we've already seen the rivalry with Cena. I just don't see, on the SmackDown brand, I don't see anywhere for Cena to go right now.
Well, that was part of it, but the main reason was they wanted to use him to put over Reigns, from what I'm hearing.
Ugh, I don't like hearing that either. But I'm really concerned. I don't think they've... We'll see what happens with Shinsuke, if he wins the title.
Mm-hmm.
There has not been a good track record of, with the exception of, I would say, Kevin Owens, of NXT stars being called up. I mean, that's why for the longest time, and I kept reading that Triple H basically told Vince, you can take anybody you want from the NXT roster, but you cannot take Asuka. I have to have Asuka. He said that repeatedly. He says, she is my anchor, and without her, we are going to hurt. So, that brings up, and we've discussed it earlier, what is the possibility of Asuka coming up to the main roster, but still holding her NXT title at the same time?
I think that might be just a bunch of fluff, personally, because the entire point of NXT is for people to move up.
They have her doing something special with this undefeated streak, and I don't know. I mean, do you have her relinquish the title? And that kind of defeats the purpose. I mean, they did that with Paige.
Right.
And that's all I'm trying to say. I mean, to me, watching Asuka possibly for a short period of time carry 2 titles, if possible, and continuously winning on both would be incredible.
Right.
Yeah, but it's unrealistic and it doesn't give anybody else that opportunity.
Yeah, and see, that's the thing, is that with NXT, they have that rotating cadre of women coming through that she can face and not have the same opponents. But on the main roster, what's she going to do? Bounce between Raw and SmackDown and completely decimate their women's divisions? I think that Asuka not being called up is being a victim of her own success, personally.
Oh, I agree.
Well, now, also on SmackDown, Shelton Benjamin finally made his return to WWE. Supposed to happen right when the brand extension happened last year, but he got hurt, had a torn rotator cuff. He's clear.
All this means is Money in the Bank ladder matches have just gotten that much better.
Oh yeah.
Yes. Imagine, have we had one with Shelton and Kofi?
No, I don't think so.
That would be interesting. Seeing them try to outdo each other.
Oh yeah. Well, it'll be his debut match will be next Tuesday with Chad Gable.
With Chad Gable, which he doesn't necessarily look too excited about. So
he's no Charlie Haas, that's for sure.
No, actually, I think he's about worth two of Charlie Haas, but that's just my opinion. All right, and then we got 205 Live. Enzo Amore is now a cruiserweight. He said that on Tuesday he dehydrated himself most of the day, stripped down to nothing, took a poop, and he weighed 204. So he decided to show up for 205 Live. Called out Neville after Neville retained against Tozawa. So now it looks like Enzo, potential cruiserweight contender, and bringing some much-needed personality to the show.
Yeah, well, not only personality, but you also get the spotlight of Enzo Amore. Everybody loves Enzo.
The original plans were to move him to 205 anyway, just because people were getting tired of him. And then the only thing keeping him up on the main roster was this feud going on with Cass. And coincidentally, Big Cass gets hurt, and now Enzo, they have nothing for him. So, I mean, it makes sense.
And somehow Enzo wins the feud.
I mean, basically, maybe him going to 205 Live where no one's going to watch him anyway is kind of his karma from the wrestling gods for such a crappy match. So.
Yep, for us being forced to watch him lube himself up and squeeze through bars.
God, I'm never going to get that image out of my head.
You know you don't want to.
No, trust me, I do.
Okay, so we're pretty much up on the current events here, the big news of the past week.
We have two more that we haven't talked about.
What's that?
WWE superstar Dana Brooke's boyfriend was found dead.
Yes.
Choked to death.
Is that right?
Yes. Bodybuilder Dallas McCarver, a.k.a. Big Country, has unfortunately passed away at the age of 26, according to TMZ. McCarver is the boyfriend of current WWE superstar, Raw superstar Dana Brooke, and he reportedly died after choking on food inside his home.
Wow.
Dallas McCarver
pretty horrible.
Was found just after midnight on Tuesday by a friend, and he was then transported to a local hospital where he was later pronounced dead. Law enforcement officials noted that there appears to be no signs of foul play involved.
Well, that's pretty terrible.
Once again, thoughts and prayers out to Dana. That's always tough when you lose someone.
Absolutely.
So. Yeah. The other one is, as of late this afternoon, Rusev and Lana reportedly asked the WWE for their release.
I kept stalling to go to this, and my friend Tony brought this up to me leading into SummerSlam, that Rusev was apparently unhappy and wanting to get his release, and I mentioned it after the wonderful 10-second match between Rusev and Randy Orton, that potentially that was their way of showing him the door.
One of the articles that I'm reading right here, it says, current WWE SmackDown Live superstars Rusev and Lana have reportedly asked for their release from the WWE. According to Bill Bahati of the Dirty Sheets podcast, Rusev has been extremely frustrated with WWE SmackDown Creative. When he initially returned to the company from an injury at the beginning of the summer, he seemed to be getting a WWE World Title push, but it all changed when Jinder Mahal and was put into a flag match with Cena instead. Rusev also lost to Randy Orton in 9 seconds at SummerSlam. Orton reportedly said that if he was in Rusev's position, he would have asked for his release. Orton is also said to be unhappy with his position on SmackDown and wants to move to Raw. Yeah, they have mishandled, and getting back to what I said about Bobby Roode, another great example of an NXT superstar coming up who was very good in NXT, had a good push behind him, and gets up to the main roster and under Vince's control, and is completely mishandled. I mean, everything from the storyline of, Lana with Dolph and then Summer Rae with Rusev, to the stories coming out that the reason that storyline happened to begin with is because Vince does not like the real life pairing of Lana and Rusev. He does not think that someone as good looking as Lana should be with someone like Rusev. And the rumors have been going around that he had been trying to get them to split up and using the storyline to do so, and was very pissed off when Lana posted the photo of her engagement ring on Twitter, basically ruining the entire storyline. And once that happened, the way Rusev was booked was just downhill from there.
Well, and that's just kind of like the same thing that happened with Renee Young and Dean Ambrose. They went out, got married overnight, and it was a whole big ordeal. Well, and that was the reason they said that they put him on the middle card.
Well, it was also the main reason why they took both Renee and Dean off of Total Divas. Because if you look at the real-life couples, I mean, how many of those couples have had their wedding on Total Divas?
Right.
And, from what I keep reading on that one is, once again, Vince was very pissed because he wanted to use last season to do the season finale of Dean Ambrose and Renee Young getting married, and they completely changed that because Dean did not want to go through with that.
Well, there's nothing official yet, and it's only speculation until something happens. But for right now, potentially Rusev and Lana may be on their way out.
Here's the quick question I have. Where do you see them going?
GFW.
Now, do you think she goes? Because, I mean, she's had an acting career. She's been in movies, and I really
saw a story from regarding Lana that said she plans to never stop wrestling. She has no plans to quit wrestling. So, yes, I do think she goes.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I definitely think they would go to GVW or GFW.
Yep. New Japan is a possibility, just because they love their gigantic white boys there. So now let's go to what is becoming my favorite portion of the show, the Ghosts of Wrestling's Past.
Are you the spirit whose coming was foretold?
I am.
Who? What are you?
I'm the ghost of
Wrestling's
past.
All right, so today we have Ghosts of Wrestling Past of WrestleMania IX. This one was the first WrestleMania to be outdoors, and I want to say the first one in Vegas, and the only one in Vegas, with Caesar's Palace. And for me, I don't think Vegas and that time or any time outside is a good idea for a wrestling match, because it can't be healthy to be running around out there with that heat. So, okay, guys, what did you guys think of everything?
First of all, I gotta disagree with you on the weather portion, only because if you look at when it tends to be the hottest in Vegas, it's September. And they were able to hold the very first outdoor NHL game ever in NHL history in the parking lot of Caesar's Palace in 1991 for a preseason game between the New York Rangers and the LA Kings.
Yeah, that's completely different, in all fairness.
Do you know how tough it is to try to keep ice frozen in Vegas in the summer? April isn't that bad out there.
Yeah, it was April. It was April 4th. Vegas is pretty moderate. I mean, Chad, honestly, you've never been to Vegas.
I haven't. I also know I don't want to go to a desert where nothing is supposed to live. So I also know that things should not be
right. But in April, it's not that bad.
Yeah, it's very nice in April.
Yeah. It's fairly temperate.
Yeah. So, I mean, not for me, I love this WrestleMania. I mean, the theming, the set design, and watching Bobby Heenan ride in on a camel backwards.
And don't forget Fincus Maximus.
Well, Fincus Maximus. And for me, it was the very first time I ever got to hear Jim Ross call a match.
It was his surprise debut in the WWF. He had never. That was his first WWF. So that should tell you the ideas and the plans they had for him. They debuted him at their biggest show.
And that was the introduction of the word slobber knocker to the WWE universe.
Yes, it was. And our lives have never been the same.
Much to the surprise of Bobby Heenan, who sounded befuddled at what the word slobber knocker was. Well, Bobby Heenan, and you and I talked about this a little bit earlier
today. We did.
Bobby Heenan was in rare form for WrestleMania IX.
Yes,
there were things that man said that would... I can understand why they posted the disclaimer that the views and things that have been stated in this do not reflect because none of that would fly today.
Right. From he called Tatanka Tonto, made references to Native Americans being lazy, and that he might just fall asleep there on the mat and Shawn Michaels will pin his shoulders down for a 3 count.
What was the other one? Chief running chicken, circling up the wagons for the massacre.
The highlight of that match, though, was Luna Vachon, Miss Ontario. Normally, nobody wins the thing, but this year she won it.
God,
he was. I mean, constantly making fun of Oklahoma and JR during the entire match. I mean, it was. I was laughing a lot at that one.
And poor Jim Ross just trying to be serious and call the match. He was so used to that, the Jim Crockett, Turner Sports, WCW mindset of it being an actual sport. His first event, he's wearing a toga, calling a cartoon.
Well, and he's calling a cartoon with Bobby Heenan and Randy Savage, who out of nowhere, and I still don't understand what the hell. Isn't it amazing if Sensational Sherry won the Intercontinental Championship? And it's like, where the hell did that come from?
Randy Savage was not... He really became a strong color commentator after a while, but he was pretty weak in his early days. I remember on the debut Raw, which we talked about on our first episode, when he was asking which one's Rick and which one's Scott, the one in the middle.
Oh yeah, it was. I mean, all in all, I never had a problem with it. This was the very first pay-per-view I ever got to watch. Now, I didn't watch it live. I remember, on a typical Friday night after school, my dad would get home from work, and we would go. And this is a throwback. We would go to Warehouse Videos.
Yep.
And I would always go into the wrestling section, and this was the first time I ever convinced my dad to get me a pay-per-view. I remember I begged and pleaded to see if he would even take me to Vegas for the pay-per-view, and that didn't fly. That wasn't going to happen. And so because of that, and I think I was so devastated that he wouldn't do that, he rented the pay-per-view for me. So that was the very first pay-per-view I ever got to watch at home. And it holds a special place for me, but I don't think it was that bad of a pay-per-view.
I think that hindsight has been really hard on this show, because I remember watching it. I was 12 years old. It was the first WrestleMania I'd ever gotten to see live, and I loved it. I remember the two doinks and just thinking that was really cool. And seeing the Frankensteiner from Scott Steiner And my favorite wrestler has always been Bret Hart. Ever since the first time I saw him, the first pay-per-view I ever got to watch live was Royal Rumble 93, and I got to see him go against Razor Ramon. I just remember that, Razor had him in that bear hug, and Bret goes out, the referee drops his hand the second time, and right when he starts to drop it the third time, my mom starts humming the Popeye theme. But I've always liked Bret Hart, and in watching this match again, the show again, in preparation for this this episode, Bret Hart versus Yokozuna was a surprisingly good match. And just the way it started with Bret Hart going 99 miles an hour straight at Yokozuna, when it opened up and he threw that drop kick at him and knocked him back into the corner, and up until that point he'd only ever been knocked off his feet by two people, Jim Duggan and Randy Savage. And so this was a special thing, and they had a lot more intertwining feuds as well. If you remember, during the show they kept talking about how Lex Luger had knocked out Bret Hart at the WrestleMania brunch, and then when Perfect goes to the back and is looking for Lex Luger, he winds up getting into a fight with Shawn Michaels, which ultimately led to their Intercontinental title match at SummerSlam. And there was a lot more long-term thoughts, and we can't forget The Undertaker's entrance, riding in the chariot with the Vulture. It's probably one of the best entrances he's ever had.
For being, let's remember, there have been two Undertaker outdoor entrants that happened in broad daylight.
Yes.
Okay. There was WrestleMania 9, and there was the WrestleMania 31 at Santa Clara.
Yes.
Okay. That entrance at Santa Clara, for me, was extremely disappointing.
Of course.
And the reason being is, and Tristan, Undertaker by far my favorite wrestler.
Yeah.
I mean, him and Mr. Perfect.
Mr. Perfect.
And so his entrance is special. To go dark, the thunder, the lightning,
right?
The light. If they would have done something similar to what they did for WrestleMania 9, I would have been totally fine with that.
Yep.
It was unique. I mean, he's never had another entrance like that ever since.
Right, and I think it was one of the best that he's ever had. WrestleMania 14 with the Druids, and you've got several. WrestleMania 20, when he first came back as the Dead Man. There were some pretty good ones, but I think that ranks right up there.
Which I find ironic that
considering it was his worst match ever. Yeah.
Exactly.
I was just gonna say that.
Here it is. It's his probably one of his greatest, entrances ever, and it's one of the worst matches. I mean, and it's things like that I think are the reason why WrestleMania 9 gets such a bad name. I mean, I want to know, because you and I keep gushing over this one. Why does Chad? I want to know, why does Chad think this was such a burden to get through?
Well, no. So my big thing is the Frankensteiner by Scott Steiner almost fell on his freaking head. I mean, there were a lot of just botched moves.
Okay,
Hogan
but
had some botched.
It was Scott Steiner, and he's never been the most graceful wrestler.
Right. But, I mean, there was that. There were a lot of botched moves. And then, because my favorite wrestler of all time, Tristan can tell you that
is The Undertaker.
The Undertaker.
I'm pretty sure that if The Undertaker dropped Trout and told him to hit his knees, he would, but...
There's probably no doubt about that. But it's the fact that he looked like Brock Lesnar versus Braun Strowman. It was just not pretty. And to someone like Giant Gonzalez, he wasn't even good.
No.
Giant Gonzalez was not a good wrestler.
And the funny part about that is he became a wrestler because he couldn't play basketball. He was actually recruited out of South America, Argentina, I believe, by Ted Turner to play for the Hawks. And he had this big money contract, and so he couldn't play basketball. So they're just like, hey, let's make him a wrestler. And El Gigante was born.
Yes.
And just like Mike being a worse referee than he was a wrestler, El Gigante was a worse wrestler than he was a basketball player.
And it was just that was miserable. I mean, Doink the Clown. I always liked Doink the Clown. He just the idea of Doink just always.
You're talking evil Doink, not stupid Doink.
Right, evil Doink.
Okay,
awesome. And I don't know. It's just one of those things where it was. Again, I'm the youngest person in the group by probably 5 years.
Pretty close.
And
quick question. Sorry to interrupt. Here's a question I have. Was this the first time you watched WrestleMania IX?
First time I've watched the whole thing. Yeah.
Okay.
I've watched 3 of the I've seen 3 of the matches previously.
Because I can tell you for me personally, and I think the same for Tristan, because correct me if I'm wrong, this was your first WrestleMania you watched live.
Yeah.
Okay. So you and I mean, I was 11 when WrestleMania. Well, I was 10. I hadn't turned 11 yet.
I was 12.
Okay. So, I mean, we watched this when we were kids, and a great example of where it was great when it happened, but in retrospect, we go back with things that we know today and we look at it. I mean, that finish at the time to WrestleMania was amazing.
I know, I loved it. I liked Hulk Hogan. Well, everybody liked Hulk Hogan.
Everybody loved Hogan, and the crowd went absolutely crazy. And then, years down the road, we learn that this was all politics.
Right. And Hogan. And see, so you and I, Mike, we have the privilege of being able to look back on it and watch it with an untainted mind, because we remember watching it that first time. Whereas Chad, with it being the first time he's seen it, he's already been poisoned, for lack of a better term. He's already smart. He knows that Hogan's a politician. He knows what botches are. You could never have told me that Scott Steiner messed that move up. He still hit it, didn't he? So I would have never thought he messed it up.
I mean, the only botch to me that and they pointed out in the match was when Bob Backlund missed the drop kick on Razor Ramon.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, they legitimately said he missed that.
Yep. So, well, hang on. Let's go ahead and let Chad give us his feedback on the rest of the show, because we're kind of stepping on him here a little bit. Well, go ahead, Chad.
Again, these are. I'm seeing matches of people that I know, such as Shawn Michaels, the Steiner brothers. Again, we see Rikishi, but not Rikishi. He was Fatu this time. It seems like we really like the Steiner brothers and Rikishi. So you have Shawn Michaels, Hulk Hogan, IRS, which I like IRS just because I've met him in person.
He's a good guy too.
Yeah.
And debunked one of our wonderful family myths.
I hate that.
Which one was that?
We had always been told that our Uncle Lon had worked with IRS's mother at a Budweiser brewery in Fulton, New York. Miller Brewery at Fulton, New York. So I asked him about this, and he said, well, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but my mother has spent the last however many years working for Hewlett-Packard in Binghamton. So it's probably not her. However, there are a lot of rotundas in upstate New York, so somebody's probably claiming me. Yeah, so the story wasn't necessarily a lie, but it wasn't true.
Okay.
Right. But, it was... You have Shawn Michaels versus Tatanka. I don't really remember Tatanka. I don't know anything about Tatanka. I know Shawn Michaels. I know Shawn Michaels is a huge name. So the bookings, not knowing who the people were, what the feuds were, everything really was, it didn't work for me. Like, I didn't understand the pairing of Hulk Hogan and
Brutus Beefcake.
Yeah. I didn't understand that.
If I remember correctly, though, they showed the clips of the setup with the briefcase, and right.
Okay. I mean, and I get that, but it's just like, okay, doesn't really. Some of them just didn't really fit. Again, the Undertaker getting completely manhandled, and the fact that it hurt my feelings because it's like Undertaker never gets manhandled. Nobody manhandles the Undertaker unless
that was kind of the point, though.
Giant Gonzalez or
Brock Lesnar.
Yeah.
Or Mick Foley.
As hard as it is for me to say, Brock Lesnar manhandled the Undertaker.
Undertaker has one win over Brock Lesnar, and it's tainted.
Whatever. Shut up.
So yeah, I told you, he's got a total big boy crush on friggin' Mark Calloway.
The only match that really stood out to me as a great match was the Yokozuna Bret Hart.
Right?
It was,
of all the matches to be like a great match.
I wouldn't have thought it was going to be a great match, but it was really awesome. Especially, and the spot that I really loved was when Bret Hart pulled Yokozuna down and trapped his leg between the ropes.
Yes.
So he couldn't get up.
Oh, that was so good.
Beating the trap. I'm like, but the ref wasn't trying. Like nowadays, the ref would be like, okay, let's try to get him unhooked. But no, they didn't do that. They said, okay, look, you are clearly at a disadvantage, so we'll let you do whatever you want. But like, well, who was it? Crush? Who was Crush? I don't know who you are.
You don't know Crush?
I've never heard of you. No.
That's
I like
sad.
Crush. Yeah, well, for me, the most impressive thing out of WrestleMania IX was watching Bret Hart put those two massive ham hocks in a sharpshooter.
Oh, my gosh.
Exactly. I mean, for me, the second best, I mean, tag team match was really good, but I did like the Tatanka Shawn Michaels match. I mean,
it was a good match, but again, it was, who are you? I mean, you think of, well, nowadays, if you think of WrestleMania, you think of the biggest names in the business.
But those were the biggest names in the business. Tatanka, Tatanka had a winning streak that was longer than Goldberg's.
Yes.
Shut up.
No, he did. He did. Tatanka was undefeated for about a year and a half.
Well, like I said, there's some huge names. Like the main event was definitely two huge names that will be. We need to fill a spot, and now they're going to Hall of Famer.
Well, let me ask you a question. Have you seen any of the previous WrestleManias, 1 through 8?
I've seen the only one that I've seen is 1 and 2, and that's courtesy of you giving them to me.
Right. So let me ask you a couple of questions here. If these sound like WrestleMania matches to you, Coco Beware versus the Natural Butch Reed.
No.
The Islanders and Bobby Heenan versus the British Bulldogs and Coco Beware.
Yeah, well, British Bulldogs were awesome. I don't know who the other ones were, but I mean the British Bulldogs.
Okay. Let's see.
Owen Hart versus Skinner.
Yep. Or the Blue Blazer versus Mr. Perfect.
Mm-hmm.
These are all WrestleMania matches. In fact, Coco Beware versus Butch Reed took place at WrestleMania 3, which is arguably the biggest WrestleMania of all time. The thing is that these lower tier matches were the norm for big wrestling shows. So you have a big match to start off the show, and then you bring in a couple of coolers, and then you have a bigger match. Then you bring in a couple of coolers, and then you have your main event. So you had Shawn Michaels versus Tatanka for the Intercontinental title to open the show. Then you had a couple of coolers. You had the Head Shrinkers versus the Steiners. You had the Crush Doink, and you had Razor and Backlund. Then you had the Mega Maniacs versus Money Incorporated for the tag titles. Then you had Lex Luger versus Mr. Perfect, and Giant Gonzalez versus The Undertaker. And then you had the world title match. That was typical for WrestleMania and for big wrestling shows in general.
Yeah, you really didn't get into your WrestleMania being big name versus big name until
recently.
WrestleMania 10. And even that itself didn't have I mean, you had Owen and Brett to open the match.
Right.
You had Alundra Blaze and Leilani Kai for the women's title.
Which was only done because it was WrestleMania 10.
Exactly. You had Yokozuna and Lex Luger, and then you had the
ladder match,
Razor Ramon and Shawn Michaels, and then Bret Hart, Yokozuna.
But you also had Bam Bam and Luna versus Doink and Dink. You had
Randy Savage versus Crush.
That's one of my favorite matches on that card, though.
It was a good match, but I mean, we're talking about Crush coming off of
Just
WrestleMania 9. Yeah, it wasn't Kona Crush that we both agree with. And then you had Men on a Mission defeated the Quebecers. Earthquake defeated Atom Bomb
in a 30-second match.
35 seconds. So I mean, you really. Yeah, I get where he's coming from, you know, especially growing up watching when every match could have been a main event match, looking at the stars that were wrestling. But
so I kind of feel bad here a little bit because we are basically saying we are better than you. We're better than you because we've been watching it forever. I'm not trying to really get that. I'm not really trying to put that on you. I'm just trying to get you to look at it from a different perspective.
I like where he's coming from, though, because it gives us a different view from someone who hasn't been watching it as long as you and I have.
Right. So go ahead, Chad.
So,
well, no, I mean, and like I said, the biggest thing is just, especially when, I mean, and you had to have felt this except for the fact that Brock Lesnar won, or think of the Montreal Screwjob. How much do you hate that pay-per-view just because your favorite wrestler got demolished?
I love that show.
He lost, but still.
I love that show. It's one of my favorites, actually.
Of course it is. But
way to throw a wrench into that one, Tristan.
Well, I mean, I have my favorites, but I tend to prefer matches over wrestlers. So if my favorite loses, I don't take it personally.
Well, no, you're right. I don't. But it was a bad match.
Yes, it was a bad match.
So that, I mean, especially watching your favorite wrestler in a bad match, that's even worse. But I mean, I'm not discrediting the fact that the Shawn Michaels Tatanka match was a good match. I have no idea who this guy is. He doesn't. I mean, for one, he didn't look like a Native American, so I don't understand how he's Tatanka.
He is, though. He is a Lakota Indian.
I mean, Shawn Michaels' hair was amazing.
Oh, that feathered mullet is just epic.
It is.
Oh, man.
It was impressive.
Wait till if you watch some of the 1993 Raws and stuff, wait until Kevin Nash shows up. Whoo-wee.
God,
he had an epic mullet, too.
I really wish I had a button that we could hit that would play Glorious right now, because it truly was. I mean, that hair was
some
just
good ones. Flowing. Sparky Plug had a great one.
Well, I mean, even Scott Steiner had one that was great.
Oh yes,
Marty. They all. The
match. Not saying that Bob Backlund's not a household name when it comes to wrestling. The Bob Backlund and Razor Ramon match wasn't. It was like, why are you putting these? But I guess, I mean, Bob Backlund was still towards the end of his career.
Yeah. Well, Bob Backlund had just been the Iron Man in the 1993 Royal Rumble, and I think this was kind of his reward for it.
Well, and like he had never been in a WrestleMania.
Right.
You know, that was his first WrestleMania. For me, the thing that, you know, it's the one match that a lot of people don't talk about on the card is the narcissist Lex Luger versus Mr. Perfect.
That was, that was a decent match.
Well, and the only reason Lex Luger was even in the WWF was because of the failed WBF.
No, you got that backwards. The only reason he was ever in the WBF was because his contract with WCW wouldn't let him wrestle. As soon as he was able to wrestle, they brought him over.
Yeah, but didn't the WBF fold before?
Yes.
So, I mean, that's what I'm saying. He had his contract with the World Bodybuilding Federation, and then that folded, and they were able to bring him over. I mean, it's one of the shorter-lived gimmicks. He debuts as the narcissist at the Rumble for his match.
Turns on the 4th of July.
On the 4th of July, he turns into Lex Luger, the American hero, basically.
Right.
So final thoughts on WrestleMania 9 is it really wasn't as bad as people have said. They were good matches, but anybody that went back, especially as a newer fan like myself, would go back and kind of second guess it and kind of look past some things and overlook certain parts of certain matches. But overall, not as bad as people want to say it is. So I'm going to give it a pretty good rating. It wasn't terrible, but it wasn't the greatest.
I'd give it a C+, B-.
What about you, Mike?
When I was a younger kid, I'd probably give it a B-. Going back and watching it this week, knowing what we know now and everything that was involved, I'd give it about a C-.
Yeah. I'm going to give it I'll give it a solid C. I mean, it wasn't, like I said, it wasn't great. Wasn't terrible. I mean, unfortunately, the match I looked forward to the most in this was a terrible match, and I knew it was a terrible match. And
I think the biggest thing for me, really quick, and you've seen it maybe with one other WrestleMania when they held was it WrestleMania 2008 at the Citrus Bowl? So that would have been what,
yes.
24?
Yeah.
The WWE took an empty parking lot, put in bleachers, and turned it into probably one of the best looking venues that they've ever held a WrestleMania in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the theming of that, we've never seen a WrestleMania themed like we have WrestleMania 9.
I don't think we really have since either.
Yeah, I mean, other than, like I said, WrestleMania 24, where they took the dump of the Citrus Bowl and turned it into that, bringing in all of those palm trees and everything they did. We've never seen another themed pay-per-view.
Well, there's probably a reason for that, though.
Wait, but then again, in WrestleMania 24, we did have a couple of the speakers fall on people, so that wasn't something to write home about either.
Isn't that when the fireworks blasted into the crowd, too?
No, the speaker system fell into the crowd, and I was lucky that I didn't go to WrestleMania that year, because that's right where we were supposed to be sitting. Ooh. So Mike, I guess it's your turn now to pick the next week's Ghost Wrestling Pass.
Okay, so yeah, I think I'm going to go with, let's go with WrestleMania 20. 20th anniversary of WrestleMania back at MSG.
Something that Chad can relate to a little bit, because he wasn't, 6.
And I cannot definitely say I remember watching this one live.
Oh, good.
Yeah, it was when my dad was stealing cable. But
but yeah, let's go with that one, and I think that'll be a good topic for next week. So
okay, so next week we will be discussing the goings on of the week. It doesn't look like we have any big shows this coming week, so it's just going to be kind of the first week we have where we don't have something big to talk about. And we'll be talking about WrestleMania 20, where it all began again. So now for this week's Indie Spotlight, we're going to talk about Primos Pro Wrestling out of Denver, Colorado. The promoter is a guy by the name of Joe McDougal, and he founded Primos Pro Wrestling based off of the remnants. He purchased what was left of the IWA, that was a promotion out of Colorado, and he started Primos Pro Wrestling. The biggest thing that Primos does is a show called Slave to the Deathmatch, which is coming up again this September. I believe it's the 7th or 8th edition. And they do a deathmatch tournament. It's fairly unique. The first round is tag team matches, and then in the second round, the tag team partners that won face each other. And then from there, they go into a 4-way final that's always a crazy match. Like a couple of years ago, they basically took the entire ring apart or the canvas and everything off, and they had the match just on the boards that are underneath the mat, and that was pretty nuts. They've had matches on the 10,000 thumbtacks. They've had Legos, light bulbs, flaming tables. They had a match called Things That Sting, where it was like a thumbtacks match, and they had like lemon juice and chipotle and rubbing alcohol, and it was nasty. But they also put on really, really good normal shows every month. Joe goes out of his way to bring in high-level talent from all around the world. The first show I went to was the Slave to the Death match, and he brought in Harry Smith, David Hart Smith, and Rikishi. But he's also brought in Necro Butcher, Tommy Dreamer, Mick Foley, Teddy Hart, Paul London. He had Hernandez, Steve Corino. This guy brings in all sorts of big names to put on the best show possible for the people that come to watch his product. And it's a strong product. They do their monthly shows, and they have their championships and ongoing storylines. There's no TV or anything like that, but they do very strong monthly shows. The best show that they've done that I've been to was a tribute show for a former wrestler named Jack Zaylor who had passed away. And they brought in Mike and Matt Sydal and several other wrestlers from around the country, and got interviews from people that are in WWE and then knew Jack. And all of the wrestlers worked the show free of charge, and all of the proceeds went to a suicide prevention foundation, and it was just a really phenomenal show. So if you ever get the chance, you're in Denver, you want to see a good show, look up the Watering Bowl, and that's the typical venue that they're at. It's kind of a dog park / bar. It's pretty neat. And they look them up. They do great shows. Check them out on Facebook. It's facebook.com/Primos Wrestling. Twitter is @Primos Wrestling. They've got a website, primosprowrestling.com. And you won't be sorry. It's a tremendous product. That's it for us this week. We got that time down yet again, so that's a win. Hopefully we'll be getting somewhere between an hour and an hour and a half on the regular. That's what we're shooting for. Just want to remind you that ultimately our goal is that we're not picking these shows for the Ghost of Wrestling Pass, that you are. So if you would like to pick a show to have us watch and review, you can either do that. You can do that on Facebook or Twitter @PW Almanac. You can hit us up on email, prowrestlingalmanac@gmail.com. Don't forget to visit the website, prowrestlingalmanac.com, and subscribe to this YouTube channel to keep getting such wonderful content. We're also going to try to do something a little bit different. My daughter is quite the wrestling fan and has wanted to be doing her own podcast, so I think in leading up to pay-per-views and big events, we're going to go ahead and let her do that, and we're going to do a Pro Wrestling Almanac Kids podcast. It's just going to be short, nothing special, but it will be 100% family-friendly. And if you got kids that are wrestling fans, maybe it'll be something that they'd like to listen to. So until next week, I'm Tristan, and for Mike and Chad, thanks for listening, and keep watching wrestling.